So you've got a friend like this. Everybody does. The one who, a few years back, put some money into something you didn't really understand, didn't ask a lot of questions about, and now just has a different life, different house, different vacations, talks about the market like it's a person he's on good terms with. And every single time you see him, some small, ugly part of your brain does the same math. What if I'd done that? What if I'd just said yes when he told me about it? Here's the thing nobody wants to hear. And honestly, it kind of annoyed me when I first read the research on it. You are not looking at the guy who got rich doing something risky. You are looking at the one guy out of maybe a few hundred who didn't lose everything doing the exact same thing. And you have literally no way of knowing that from where you're standing because the other few hundred aren't posting about it. They're just quiet. Let's call him Miles. Miles put a chunk of his savings, more than he probably should have, into something early, weird, a little embarrassing to explain at a dinner party. Crypto, an app that didn't exist yet, a friend's startup, doesn't really matter which. What matters is he did it at 26 with money he technically couldn't afford to lose, and it worked. Not a little, a lot. Enough that 10 years later, he's the guy at the barbecue everyone quietly resents and admires at the same time. You remember exactly where you were standing when he first told you about it, actually. A kitchen, at somebody else's party, him talking fast and a little manic about this thing he just put money into, you nodding along, half listening, thinking he sounded like every other guy who'd ever tried to explain an investment to you at a party. You went home. You forgot about it within a week. He didn't. Here's what you don't see. You don't see Miles's college roommate, who put almost the same amount into almost the same kind of bet 2 years earlier and lost basically all of it. You don't see the guy from Miles's old job who did the exact thing Miles did, same timing even, slightly different asset, and is still renting an apartment. You don't see any of them because losing quietly doesn't make for a very interesting story, and nobody brings up their worst financial decision unprompted at a barbecue. The mathematician and statistician Abraham Wald has a story attached to his name that's become almost a shorthand for this whole idea. During World War II, the military was looking at planes that came back from combat riddled with bullet holes in certain spots, and wanted to know where to add armor. The obvious answer was, reinforce where the holes are. Wald said no, that's backwards. Reinforce where the holes aren't, because those are the planes that didn't make it back to be studied. The planes you can see are, by definition, the ones that survived. The real information is in the ones you can't see at all. You are doing the exact same thing with Miles. You are looking at the plane that came home and trying to reverse engineer the decision from the outcome, when the actual lesson is sitting in a pile of planes that never made it back that you don't even know existed. The researcher Michael Mauboussin has spent a lot of his career trying to untangle skill from luck in exactly these kinds of outcomes. And one of the things he points out is something called the paradox of skill. As luck plays a bigger role in a given field, and early stage speculative bets are basically soaked in luck, the outcomes look, from a distance, more and more like skill, because that's the story our brain prefers to tell. Nobody wants to believe their friend's fortune came down to timing and nerve and a coin flip that landed right. It's much more satisfying to believe he saw something the rest of us missed. And this is where it gets a little uncomfortable, because it's not just other people doing this. You do it too. About Miles specifically. Every time you replay the story in your head and quietly edit it into something that sounds like foresight. Here's the twist, and it's the part that actually matters if you want to stop torturing yourself every time this guy posts a photo from somewhere warm. The psychologists Jonathan Baron and Baron Hershey ran research on something called outcome bias and found that people consistently judge the quality of a decision by how it turned out, not by how reasonable the decision actually was at the time it was made. Same decision, same information, same odds. If it works, we call the person a genius. If it doesn't, we call them reckless. The decision didn't change, only the ending did. Which means the entire story you've built about Miles being smarter than you, braver than you, somehow built different, is a story you constructed backwards from a coin that happened to land on the right side. If it had landed the other way, and for a lot of people who made the identical bet, it did, you'd be telling yourself a completely different story about the exact same kind of decision. You'd be calling it a cautionary tale instead of an inspiration. Miles, for what it's worth, doesn't actually think he's a genius either. If you ever get him a few drinks in and away from the barbecue crowd, he'll tell you, if he's being honest, that he was scared the whole time, that he almost pulled out twice, that he has a very specific memory of nearly selling at the worst possible moment out of pure panic. He knows, better than anyone watching from the outside, how close the whole thing came to going the other way. He just doesn't lead with that part, because I got lucky and terrified isn't really a barbecue story either. So here's what I'd actually do with this, if I were you. Stop asking what Miles did. Start asking how many people did the same thing Miles did around the same time. Not because the answer will make you feel better exactly, but because it'll give you the real picture instead of the highlight reel. Most of the time, the honest answer is a lot of people tried it, most of them lost something, and one of them happens to be sitting across from you at a barbecue, which is exactly why the math feels so wrong every time you do it in your head. There's a version of Miles in every social circle, and honestly, most of us have quietly run the same regret math about someone. It rarely changes anything to know the real odds. But it does change the shame part, the part where you lie awake wondering what's wrong with you for not seeing what he saw. Nothing was wrong with you. You just weren't shown the graveyard. You've got a friend like this. Everybody does. Next time that little ugly math starts running in your head, what if I just done what he did? Try running a different number instead. Not what did he do? How many people did the exact same thing and never got to tell you about it? If you've got a Miles in your life, drop in the comments what he actually did. No names needed, just the story. I guarantee half the people reading this have one too, and it helps to know you're not the only one doing the math wrong at every single barbecue. Subscribe if this one hit, because the next story is about the version of this that's even harder to see coming.